There is a lot of secrecy, taboo, and misunderstood things about people who are addicted to pornography. I was one myself for 17 years, and I can tell you my life now has nothing to do compared to my previous one as an addict. In this video, I'm going to be telling you about the reality of what I went through as someone who was addicted to pornography, the hidden things that nobody talks about, the struggles, how often and how much I was watching pornography, and all the other things that happen in an addict's life that you would never think of. Hi everyone, my name is Dimitri. I'm a therapist helping men quit pornography. I have recovered from my own 17-year-long pornography addiction, and my mission is to help as many people as I can heal the deeper hurt that is limiting them in their life, starting with pornography. And can you imagine that, a world where everybody is free from their baggage and their past suffering and just living their best life with purpose? This is the world I want to build. That world would be a different place, and I am creating it with you right now. In this video, I'm going to set myself back in 2012 at a time where I was living in France. And it's a time where I was already addicted to pornography, but I was in complete oblivion that was the case because the consequences of the addiction were not yet visible in my life. But already there were many signs that would have shown that I was addicted. If it is something I would have wanted to heal, the signs were already there to see, but I was just not able to read them at the time. It was not a huge source of suffering yet. But as I say that, at the time I had broken up the year before from a very functional, very happy relationship just for the sheer sake of sex and exploring sex and sexuality. That was the hidden agenda that I did not know at the time when I had broken up. So I'm going to describe 24 hours in this cycle, starting with when I wake up, and will be somewhere in 2012. It's a Friday. And you'll understand why I've picked a Friday. Not everything that I'm going to say happened in this one perfect day or a very imperfect day that I remember, but it's a recollection of the things that you go through when you're addicted to pornography, or at least it was my own experience, and is a very typical one of someone who's addicted to pornography. And just for context, at the time I was oblivious of my addiction, then my addiction kind of ramped up from 2013 to 2016, where I got engaged in a stable relationship again. And it was in 2017 that I decided it was time to do something about my addiction because it was clashing in the way of my very happy relationship yet again. And I decided I had to do something about it. And I put the hard work in thinking about the best way to quit pornography. And 6 months later, I had overcome most of the compulsion to watch pornography with the technique that I present in this channel, and that is the therapy that I'm using with my clients today. So how am I feeling about this video right now? I'm feeling pretty nervous, to be honest. I'm not too sure what I'm going to disclose and not disclose, but there'll be a lot of my personal stuff in that. I don't know if I'm going to say it's going to be shocking or if it's just going to be very regular things to hear, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is going to be pretty raw as far as I can perceive it. And I really want to make this video because I want people to know what the reality of someone who's addicted to pornography is. And the first reason is that if this is you watching this video, then you can see the signs early that there is an issue with your pornography consumption, and you can start thinking about it. And it's not so much about thinking, but accepting that this is happening and start looking for solutions. The second reason is that if you know someone who's addicted to pornography, or you want to help someone who's addicted to pornography, maybe their partner, a family member, a friend, you have some elements of what is their reality and how you can fit into this reality. For some people, this will be very trivial and ordinary, and maybe you're addicted to pornography. And for some people, this will be a very remote reality that they cannot even envisage. So it's a bit of a spectrum, and that is why I want to explain it in really raw terms, how it feels to be addicted to pornography and the things we do in this situation. So before I go any further, I'm going to issue a huge trigger warning about sex, sexuality, pornography, relationships, women, pickup, extreme fantasies, extreme pornography, things like that. I'm not going to go into very granular detail about the kind of pornography I was consuming and things like that, but there may be a lot of triggering content in this video. So this is maybe not the best video to watch today if you're feeling a little bit frazzled, if you're feeling a little bit on the edge. And I am a little bit nervous, but I'm also pretty excited. I haven't really reopened that Pandora box for a very long time, let alone on camera. So let's see how we go with it. There may be some emotions as well. Let's do it, see what happens, for the greater good, hopefully. Let's see what happens to help as many people as we can. All right, so we're starting on that day, on that Friday of 2012, I was waking up. And you may or may not know that, but as you wake up, before you wake up, there is that state where you're half awake and half asleep, called the hypnagogic state. And this is a state where you're really, really receptive to everything that's happening around you. This is the stage where you get to smell the first smells, you get to hear the first noises, you get to feel your body, probably your first pains if your body is in pain. And it's a state where you're very, very receptive. And so in that hypnagogic state and that these first moments of awakeness, the first feeling, because it's not really about thoughts, the first feeling is one of being aroused, being sexually aroused and being sexually turned on. And that would emerge because I would have had a sex dream, possibly involving an ex-partner. And so the first thing that you wake up with is the sexual thoughts. But as I say, it's not only the thoughts, and what's very striking, and addiction is not about the thinking, although it does matter, but it's also the feeling in the body. And so in that hypnagogic state, where also if you ever listen to music in that hypnagogic state where you're about to fall asleep, this is where you get to hear the music and all its different layering. It's beautiful. I guess it's kind of like being high. I've never really been high in my life, but that's probably the closest thing that I can identify it to. But so I would start the day by being triggered. So being triggered means that there's something in me that wants to consume pornography, that wants to have sex, and that's feeling sexually aroused. So the day has not even started. We're in this hypnagogic state, and it's already about sex and pornography, and it's already a deep feeling inside me that I want to watch pornography, or that it's about sex. And so how this manifests is, sure, thinking about sex, maybe replaying a sex dream, but it's also about how we feel in our body. And for me, I knew when I was triggered and there was arousal, there was this deep heaviness in my heart. And the thing where my heart is, it's probably not my heart, it's probably some muscular tension somewhere, but it felt in my chest, it felt heavy, and it feels like it's squishing something. And so you've got that feeling from the first second of wakeness, and that feeling is not going to go until either you watch pornography, or pornography is in fact a proxy to orgasm and release. So that was the first seconds of the day. So you wake up in that state, and so you say, well, I don't really like this feeling of being triggered and having all this pressure in my chest. It's not so much about the pleasure anymore. It's not so much about the discovery anymore. It's about letting go of that feeling in my chest. The reason why I was going to engage in masturbation and release was not so much for the pleasure, although it was a part of it, but it was just to let go of that feeling of heaviness in my chest. And so sure, let's go and, engage in masturbation and release, but then I couldn't really do that without pornography. It was possible, but it would have taken a long time. So your mind kind of becomes lazy as you're getting used to using pornography to come to climax. Then your mind stops to learn how to fantasize and project sexual imagery in their mind, and you just use pornography as a way to feed yourself sexual imagery that you can climax from. So before I can go and release, I'm going to engage with pornography, and that part of me is like, oh, I'm probably going to watch pornography for 15 minutes just to get myself in the groove, and then do what I have to do. But these 15 minutes, so then I'd go and watch pornography, but these 15 minutes then would lead on to, hey, there's interesting stuff in pornography here, and curiosity is a major driver. So it'd be like, oh, these themes are interesting. These actors and actresses are interesting. These fantasies are interesting. These personalities are interesting. These sexual representations or the way they're depicted are interesting. And so very easily you click from one video to another, to a related content, to blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, it's been 30 or 45 minutes that you've been very happily exploring pornography, and you still haven't taken your shower or did anything you wanted to do. So this shower that was supposed to happen after 15 minutes after wakeness is now happening something like 90 minutes after wakeness, or an hour at least after wakeness. And so I can shut down my laptop and then have my shower and then go to work, prepare for the morning and go to work. Now at the time I was doing my PhD, I was working as an academic, so I did not have the constraints of corporate work. So I could come in at work at 11 and it was tolerated. So I would arrive at work at 11, having woken up at 9 and done not much of my afternoon. So even though it's tolerated in academia to arrive at work anytime you want, especially as an astronomer, which is what I was studying at the time, you start to get a bit of a reputation, or at least at the time, I was starting to get a bit of a reputation as the guy who was coming up at work at 11 a.m., 12 p.m. Sometimes it wasn't always about pornography, but many times, unfortunately, it was about pornography. And that reputation is kind of like funny at the beginning, and people did that with good complicity, but it's a bit of a reputation that starts sticking on your skin, and you're kind of grinning and laughing, but at the same time, I realized at that time that, hey, this is actually not super okay. Like, I'm a bit of in a gray area here where I want to be dedicated to my work. I generally care about what I'm doing and the teams that I'm working with, but there's that reputation here where I kind of have to wear a mask and kind of bite the bullet and bear with it, but I don't really want to. I'm just kind of started to carry the bag of this addiction, even though it doesn't suit me in that moment. And the funny thing is that when you're addicted to sex and pornography, you're always pretty much a little bit high. You're always a little bit elated, a little bit joyful, a little bit joyous and smiling, because you are having typically at least an orgasm a day or more. And so you've got this huge release of dopamine, which gives you energy, and oxytocin, which makes you happy. So you're always a little bit high. And so I would come to work, big smile, 11 a.m., a little bit high, really relaxed, really chill, and start working. And actually, yeah, I must have probably given the impression that I was really carefree, which was the case, but also that I didn't care. And I was a bit in shock when a really close friend of mine told that to my current fiancée at the time, where I did not know her, but she told me later. But she said to Caroline, Dimitri is this guy who doesn't care about anything. And it surprised me that she said that about me, and it was very true. It was very true. It was not that I didn't care about anything. If my family was happy, my parents and my sister, if my friends were happy, and if work was going okay, and my health was kind of taken for granted because I was young and in good health, which I was lucky. Then sex would be the next priority. Sex would be the next priority, and it would be the main topic of research, of focus, of interest, of action. Sex would be the guiding line of what's to be done in my day. And that's very typical of pornography addiction and sex addiction. So I was perceived as someone who didn't care about anything, which, I guess at the time I really wasn't prioritizing much other than having a cruisy life and where I could live that double life and be cool with it. Yeah, so then I'd come to work and do a bit of work, and in academia there's like any workplace, we've got a mix of men and women, and so maybe there would be a colleague who's a bit beautiful, and especially where I was, there was a bit of turnover. So maybe there was a colleague that was attracted to, and so I would definitely hit on colleagues at work, which, looking back, I don't recommend you do, because if things go sour in the relationship, which has chances to go sour or not sour, but if it does, you're creating problems in your relationship and creating problem at work at the same time, and that becomes complicated. But let's say there was a colleague at work, I would very much happily hit on her and go on dates and things like that. So and again, get a bit of a reputation on that as well, which at the time I thought was pretty cool, and it was like nice to have that reputation of womanizer, or this guy who's taking initiatives. But again, that's another reputation. It's another label that gets stuck on your forehead, and a lens under which people see you through. Yeah. So I would very happily do that. Even in events, corporates, in conferences and things like that. Definitely big party times in my academic life. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to be cautious about what you do with your colleagues. And so that was that. So then I'd be working for a few hours, and even inside the work. So let's say that I'd be doing research, and let's say I'm planning a conference. We're talking about conferences. Let's say I'm planning a conference with colleagues. We're all going to that conference, this astronomy conference, and let's say this conference is happening in Portugal. All right, so I was in France. Portugal's not too far, so we can book the trip to Portugal. Exciting. We're all going to do that together because we're all colleagues. We're having a great time together, so we got to book the same trains or the same planes or whatever. And so we'd be together. Maybe there's my supervisor there, my PhD supervisor, who'd be with me at the time, and we're going to look for tickets to Portugal. And so I'd go and use my browser and type in POR for Portugal, and then I'd be really worried about what's coming out. Like every time I had to type in something that started with P, I would kind of rush what I'm typing. And I wasn't really afraid that, something would come up, but actually this can have serious consequences. And I was definitely using my work laptop, to watch pornography. So this is risky. So it's not so much a judging in good and bad, is more realizing the amount of risk that's taken, that can lead to serious consequences: dismissal, losing your job, who knows, legal complaints, access blocked to certain sites, yet another reputation, things like that. So this never happened to me, and I was really not cautious. I remember going on a tangent, but one day I was at university, and I was staying at work after work to watch pornography on the university, within the cubicle on the university computers. And I thought that, no one was checking, so that was fine. And then I also had downloaded a video game a few days after that. And the day after I downloaded my video game, someone said, Dimitri, you downloaded a video game yesterday from that website. You cannot do that. Please delete the video game and don't do that ever again, because you're compromising the policy of what's happening within the university network, to which I obliged. But then I realized that I had been so lucky that I didn't get caught watching pornography. Or maybe I did get caught and they didn't say anything. But that was a big risk. That was during an internship, and I could have lost my internship, which was the beginning of awesome networking and beautiful people I was working with. So yes, again, it's not about good and bad, it's about the amount of risk. Also, the amount of risk that your colleagues fall upon this content, even though it was my personal computer, my personal sessions, that your colleagues come upon this content and, they get traumatized, or they get whatever. They perceive you in a certain way. So that was really lucky. That I didn't get good with that. But so back to our conference, we're planning conference Portugal, and I knew, and even when I was giving public presentations and things like that, there was always a voice in the back of my mind that is hoping, like, please don't, anytime I was typing something in my browser, I was really worried. And sometimes you type words that have got nothing to do with pornography, but the first 2 or 3 letters matches a keyword or a theme, and here it comes, poof, in your bar. And I have to type really quickly. And that was quite embarrassing. Yeah, so that's pretty. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit ashamed looking back, but at the time I was really carefree, and I would not have loved this. I would have hated this to compromise my work, but I thought I was untouchable and that no one would come after me for this sort of things because people are too ashamed to say anything. But it could have seriously impacted my career. All right. And so, yes, and using the work laptops, yes, there was this one day, yeah, I'm feeling ashamed about this. There was this one day where I was watching pornography with a girlfriend of mine at the time, and the laptop just fell from the bed and hit the floor and got smashed, and I had to go and fix it, or I had it fixed because that was my work laptop. And so I had to go to the office and say, hi, a brand new laptop after 3 months, and I had to say, hi, the laptop is broken, what happened? I made up some lie about, I sat on it, whatever, some stupid lie that we invent. And then they were a bit bothered because, like, oh, well, we just gave you this computer, this laptop, this is going to take some budget from the research department, blah, blah, blah. And everybody was a bit embarrassed about that. And I appeared as someone who was really careless about what I was given. And that contributes to that reputation. Again, these things that you do that where people feel disrespected and they think it's about the work, but really it's about something else. But they cannot know that because how could they assume? Yes. Okay. So all these things happen, and we we do get some work done down the line, and maybe we even have organized a conference to Portugal, and it's going to be fun. Okay. And then I finish work. And it's about 4:30. So it's about 4:30 and I finish work. So I've been working from 12 p.m. to 4:30. It's a short work day. And that again got me a reputation because at 5 p.m. I was going to my martial arts class. And my martial arts class were, and still are to an extent, a religion to me. And that was because when I was suffering a lot from this pornography addiction, sex addiction, and the frustration and being triggered, as soon as I went training, all of that would disappear. And it would not disappear at work, but it would disappear on the mat. And so I was always really, really keen to go and do martial arts. And this is why I kept on training in martial arts for so long. I've got 20 years of martial arts experience and still learning in capoeira, taekwondo, ninjutsu, MMA, BJJ, all these styles. But I was doing 2 to 3 hours of martial arts every day after uni, and I was going there religiously every day, and a bit of parkour as well, because why not? So I'd go to my martial arts class and train in a very disciplined way, and I was being free from all these ghosts that were haunting me, so I was pretty happy chap. But sometimes there'd be a pretty girl, And so let's say that on that night there would be a pretty girl, and I can see her. There was this girl I had met on the mat in a judo class, and she had the clearest hazelnut eyes I'd ever seen. She was beautiful, and I'd probably chat her up, and we'd train, and it would be fun, and I'd get her number, and that would be the end of the training. So we'd go home, and then maybe I'll be texting her. And so I remember this girl. It was the end of the training, and at the end she's texting me, and she said, "Oh, you got my number. Do you want to be my boyfriend, or is this just for fun?" And I was probably 26, and she was like 19 or something. So I laughed, and I said, "Ha ha ha," because for me, boyfriend girlfriend is not what I was looking for. And the way she was talking about sounded at the time childish to me, but she needed boundaries and she needed a projection, and so sure, it was very fair of her to ask. And I just replied, "Ha ha ha," something that was not very not respectful to her intention. And I just said, "Oh, I just want to have fun. I don't care about titles, relationship titles." And she said, "Well, I'm not the kind of girl to do that, but where I live, in my student residence, there is a lot of girls who will just be happy to, indulge in sexual interaction for the sheer sake of it." And I remember she was saying that, and I felt so many things. I felt disappointment that I had replied in this way, and then I felt like the world she was describing of easy sex was completely not available to me. This world where everybody was having sex for fun, and people valued sex. I did not know these people. And so maybe one of the biggest suffering in this addiction is that I was putting sex in such a high priority that I was not good at obtaining sex. I was getting some needs met, but of course could not get all my needs met because I was really over focusing on sex. And I was feeling a bit desperate. And I was like, this reality that she's describing, I don't have access to it. I could not go possibly and find a sex partner for the evening in a snap, someone who's like easygoing and we're just going to have sex. At the time for me, this was a very foreign reality that was either a lie or a world I just didn't have access to. So, I guess people drive sports car. I don't have access to sports cars. So this was something that was very remote from my world. But I craved having these casual, easy sexual relationships where we're all laughing and exploring and discovering together, having a great time. But this world did not exist. I did not have access to that world. And that created a huge sense of frustration in me that something was wrong with me. Feeling some emotions here. Something was wrong with me because I did not have the key to that place. And first, I thought it was very wrong of me to want to have sex. As time went, that kind of diffused, but there was a time where that was the case. And then even if it was okay to have sex, then if it was so okay, why is not everybody having sex all the time? Okay, this is a genuine, I'm being very serious here. When I was a sex addict and a porn addict, I did not understand why people were not talking about sex and pornography all the time, and why they were not having sex and watching pornography all the time. And I remember my biggest hope was to catch a glimpse of maybe people having sex somewhere in a car or through a window, or maybe to see the history of a colleague with pornography on it or something like that, so that I felt that I was normal and that we were living a big lie where everybody was doing the same thing, but nobody was talking about it. As it turns out, it is that truth where the entire world is watching pornography and having sex, and no one's talking about it, which I still find very odd that it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. But I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the only one in the world who craved sex in this way, and there was something really wrong with me at the moral level. And it was not like, oh, there's some deep hurt, a past trauma within me that is leading me to that. I was not aware of that. I thought I am morally a bad person and unable to fulfill my needs, my sexual needs and my sexual aspirations, and I just suck. I just have no value. And yeah, and my belief was every day, that's a big thing, every day where I don't have sex is a lost day. Every day where I don't have sex is a lost day. And I'm feeling so much sadness right now, because how difficult for that Dimitri at that time to live through that reality, which is not true, and not so much frustration, so many judgments, so much pain, so much isolation, so much desperation. But that was really it. Every day where I don't have sex is a day that is lost. It's a day that I have no value. It's a day that doesn't need to be lived. Even though such good things were happening in my life. I had many friends, didn't have to worry about money too much. I had an awesome career and studies, and good mental health other than sex and pornography addiction. Yeah, but that was the thing. Every day with no sex is a day that doesn't deserve to be lived through. Yeah. And so, with all that, from a few text messages with that beautiful girls with the hazelnut eyes, I would go back home and watch pornography, because I'd feel really bad and I'd feel really unaccepted. And so pornography was giving me this place where I could feel comforted, I could feel accepted, even though it's a virtual reality. At the unconscious mind cannot tell the difference between the truth and the reality. The unconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a story that's happening to us or a story that is happening to a character to which we're identifying. So I would go back home and drown my sadness in pornography. Sometimes I'd have something lined up, but let's say on that night if I had nothing lined up, and even I would like to go to a party, I would have wanted to go to a party and meet girls and just have fun and have a laugh. But some days, let's say it's just a bit of a shallow period or a bit of a calm period, I'd just go home. And home was just a place of desperation, and there was no source of enjoyment inside that home, which was a bachelor pad, other than a laptop and pornography. And so, adding the sadness and the anger that I would feel from that rejection from that girl after the martial arts class, I would say, you know what, I'm going to make this good. I'm going to make this good, and I'm going to watch a lot of pornography. And so on a weekend night, I could watch pornography all night. And, let's say at the end of martial arts class, let's say it would be something like 10 or 11 p.m. I could watch pornography. Shortest session would be 3 or 4 hours. Let's say 3 hours. A longer session would be up to 7, 8 in the morning. Something like that. Yeah. So, and the engine in that is actually feeling comforted, letting go of the anger, letting go of the desperation, finally seeing a place where there's people who value sex and engage in sex in a way that with the intensity that I was looking for at the time, and had no idea at the time really how to find sexual partners easily or how to find people who did value sex. And it's only much later that I learned that in Sydney. Yes, and so I would just watch pornography all night, generally starting with something relatively soft and interesting, or something I'd be curious about, or an actor or an actress I would have heard about during the day, and and then escalate into more and more raw or extreme, possibly violent content, until everything was done in the morning. So that was a very typical thing of me, these very long exposures to pornography for several hours. A lot of people don't do that, but also a lot of people do, more than we would think. Yes, so I'd come to bed at 7, go to sleep, all hyped up and filled with dopamine and oxytocin and a lot of tiredness, and I would fall asleep instantly. And so I would wake up at maybe 12 p.m. on a Saturday, or maybe I had something lined up at 11 a.m., a parkour session with friends, and so I'd only sleep 4 hours or 5 hours, and so I'd be really tired over the weekend as well. Yes, so that's a typical 24 hours in the night or in the day of someone who's addicted to pornography. Again, this is not extreme, or this was not extreme for me. I was a very highly functioning addict. I've used the word addict a lot in this video, but I want to say that nobody's an addict. There's only people who are addicted. Addict is not a curse. Addict is not a label. If you're suffering from addiction, you're someone who needs to heal this addiction. If you're suffering from a fracture, if your arm is broken, you're not fractured. You're just someone who's suffering from an arm fracture. And as soon as you heal that fracture, this will not be a thing for you anymore. The same is true for addiction. So if you think that you're someone who can find themselves in what I described, then you may want to take my pornography addiction test to know if you're addicted to pornography. It will give you a pornography addiction score and what to do to get better. If you know that you're addicted to pornography, I'm imploring you to check my platform, unhooked.care. This is my therapy platform. It's the technique that I've used to heal myself and the many men and clients I've worked with to heal from pornography addiction. Pornography addiction only gets worse with time. The more we're in denial, the more we wait, the more we prevent ourselves from looking for efficient solutions, the more it gets worse, until we're really down the end of the pit and consequences start to appear in our lives, and we have to deal with both the consequences and the addiction at the same time. You don't want to be there, so please take care of yourself, do the reasonable thing, and find people who can help you with your addiction. Again, my website is unhooked.care. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments about anything that I shared, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I will reply to you with the most transparency that I can.